Dr. Smith, given your expertise in holistic healthcare and personalized approaches to recovery, I'd like to know if you have any insights or recommendations for individuals who have undergone significant medical procedures, like a removal of a kidney, and how they may be dealing with and related physical or emotional challenges. How would you suggest they approach their healing journey in a holistic and mindful way?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And hopefully this sound is better.
Yes.
Let me know. Okay,
Yes.
great. So surgery has been normalized in our society, but it is a traumatic event to the body. Even a small one, but especially like a kidney, that's a major event. Not only are you going through the skin, you're going through the fascia as well, which is like all the connective tissue that sends neurological signals to our body and lets us know where we are in space and sends information and signals from our organ back to our brain. And like, to think that we completely understand the body would be naive. It is one of the most complex things in the universe. And there's just pieces of it that we're still coming to understand. So the reason I talk about holistic injury recovery and hidden injuries is I like to retrain people on what they perceive as an injury, right? So there's a couple pieces of that where your body is going through an injury pathway. And the reason I talk about injury is it is the first foundational and fundamental biochemical thing that our body does to heal. So if we can complete a proper injury cycle, we can complete a proper healing cycle. If we get stuck in the injury cycle and we keep re-injuring, that's how we slowly migrate towards disease. So to me, if I can help people, because it's not a bad thing, we need it. Like, this is how we heal. If I can just help people complete the cycle, then that is how we can be resilient for the next thing that we encounter, because life is always going to throw us stuff. So with the example of surgery, not only do we have the physical injury from the surgery, but then you usually get put on antibiotics as well for safety. And let's be honest, hospital food is not great, period. And so then you're also on hospital food that's not good. So you're not really getting good nourishment. You're having an atom bomb to your gut. You just had a physical thing that disrupted a whole bunch of connective tissue and signaling in your body. And then there's also the emotional piece that goes with it that no one really talks about, which is like the grief of, one, you just energetically lost a piece of yourself or it was altered. And two, you're recovering. So you don't feel like the person you know yourself to be, or you've been sick for a while and it's been years since you felt like yourself. And no one has really talked to you about this grief piece or the identity crisis that comes with being ill or dealing with sickness or dealing with an injury. And acknowledging that you're going through that and that you are this like full embodied human that's so much more than a body, and holding space for yourself to have the experience of like, oh, my body has been through a lot. Let me just sit here and feel that and just acknowledge what my body's doing. And, and then kidney in Eastern medicine, if you dive into like the more emotional realm, has a lot to do with fear. And so it depends on what kind of interests you, but those are all things you can look into, is like, what does this organ represent? Like, what emotional things might I be dealing with that I haven't really allowed myself to feel? Because emotions, are energy in motion. So sometimes we just have to actually let ourselves feel them, even the yucky ones, because it moves chemistry in our body. And emotions are made of peptides. So if we don't feel them, the peptides build up in our cells and our cells can't perform their function. So there's like all of these pieces. And I think of it as, physical, mental, emotional, and like energetic, chemical. That's kind of how I look at the body. So when we have all of these things, there's a couple layers of healing to that. It's like, one, like, yes, you have to do your rehab. Like, there's a reason for PT. It helps realign all your fascia and those connective tissues we were talking about. And if you don't do that, you develop weird scar tissue, and then you like can't transport your fluids and your information correctly, and it pulls on things a couple of years later, which is why you can have that old knee injury from when you were 17 that suddenly affects your hip 15 years later, that kind of concept. So PT is important. And touch is such a huge piece of healing. And I think it's totally missed from healthcare. Touch stimulates energy movement in our body. It stimulates chemistry to come to the area. So like if you have an injury that you're healing, like put your hand over it and gently massage it and just think about it and imagine your blood going there and send energy there. And like in your mind's eye, you can sit there and you can watch the cells heal in the ideal way that you want them to heal. And that's more, meditation work that you can dive into. There's stuff for that all over YouTube. I personally love Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I make meditations for my clients because I think it's really important. And it's part of the relaxation response, which is like a vagus nerve oriented thing. And you have to be in a relaxed state to repair and heal. It's called an anabolic state. It's a building state. If you're not in a relaxed state and you stay in that like sympathetic state of like, I just had a knife cut into me and I was in the hospital, you're not really going to heal in that state. It's a breakdown state. Your body is running from the figurative tiger and breaking down your muscles and different components of you to fuel you to be able to run away. And so if you stay in that mental state versus doing something like meditation where you actually calm the body and bring it into a relaxed state, that's where it'll heal. So it's kind of like the energetic, mental, physical component. And then let's dive back to the nutritional component, right? If you just got nuked in your gut with an antibiotic for your own safety, for a good reason, we need to rebuild it. And some people think just dosing with probiotics is the right thing to do. But again, it depends. It depends on the person. And if you just had major surgery, so one of the other things people don't know, when you get injured, even if you twist your ankle, but surgery for sure, part of the inflammatory process to heal, like what your immune system is doing to move cells around to do stuff, kind of induces permeability in your gut. So when you get injured, you get some leaky gut. Like they just go together physiologically. So it's that much more important for you to be extra careful with your diet when you are recovering from some kind of injury, whether it's accidental or iatrogenic, meaning like medically induced. And it's longer than you think. People are like, oh, I can do this for like 30 days and I'm good. Well, especially with something as big as that, your body is healing for a year plus. Even when you like really twist your ankle bad or you like tweak your back and you have that disc injury or whatever, that stuff heals for a year. So even when you're out of pain, it's still healing. It's still remodeling. And that's the important part of PT, right? PT helps with the remodeling phase. And if we talk about the stages of injury, I'll kind of give those as an example because this is what I love to teach about. I think it's a very simple way to look at the body and everyone that understands what an injury is, right? So when we start thinking about this, where you're like, oh, I ate that birthday cake, that was a gut injury. Oh, I drank that alcohol, that was a gut and liver injury. And then you start to kind of know, you're like, oh, I need to recover. So the stages of injury, and I'll come back to the surgery as an example, are hemostasis, which is like blood halting to form a scab and to stop you from bleeding out, right? Your body's just like, oh my gosh, a trauma just happened. Don't do anything. Let me assess and like look at everything and make sure we're okay. Just sit there. That's hemostasis and everything just stops. And then we have inflammation, which is kind of starting to initiate repair, but also removing anything bad from the area. So if there's an infection, like removing bacteria and all that, and then starting to bring in like platelets and different things to kind of build patches and things like that. And then we have assimilation, which is building more and like putting down structure that we can basically replace things with. And then the last stage is basically longevity, I like to call it, or remodeling. And that's the PT stage where you're like, okay, the structure's all there. Now I need to stretch it out. And I need to make that structure functional again. So we kind of go through all those phases. And in surgery, it's like right when you wake up, your body is in that hemostasis stage where it's like, don't move, let me fix this, which is why you're tired. And like, there's a part of me that likes, that they're getting people out of the hospital sooner now, but it doesn't mean that you should like go home and work the whole day, even if you're working on Zoom. Like that's a lot of energy in your body, and your body needs that energy to assess what just happened. So when you go home, you should be resting. And resting also doesn't always mean watching TV. Like, yes, that's a form of resting, but try out that meditation. Try reading a book. Maybe not after surgery, but in an appropriate case, take an Epsom salt bath. Like something that allows your body to kind of slow down. Or get bodywork. Bodywork is a great way to do that. If you're one of those people where your mind runs so much that you hate sitting still, go get some bodywork. That's a great solution to start to teach you and educate your brain on how to do this. And then in the inflammation stage, that's when your body might want to move, right? It's kind of trying to kind of move things through the system, but also it's like still kind of tired and it's still figuring things out. But like we need to move the blood, we need to move the lymph. It's trying to move stuff around. And then in the assimilation stage, you're like, I am ravenous. I'm so hungry. I just want to eat all of the protein. And that's your body being like, these are the building blocks I need. So what you're craving in that time, you should probably eat that. Maybe not like ice cream. Like we know when like our cravings aren't ideal, but if you're craving like meat, eat meat. And then in the longevity stage, that's like when your body wants to stretch and do slow movement and breathe and kind of just like feel into things. So that's kind of how I would think about it. And then your body goes through those stages multiple times. So it's like you might do that one day and then you might do it all over again the next day and you do it all over again the next day. And that's kind of how I help people heal appropriately, because we have to go through that cycle multiple times. And that is the maintenance of our health, because health is not a destination. It is a maintenance journey.
Right. I love that. And I think that that is really important for people to remember, that it isn't just a one and done. You don't go through the stages just one time, and it's not necessarily like you're going to go to one stage and the other. Sometimes you do a couple and, you need to complete it. I like that you said that. So for one person, they may need to go through it twice. Other people, it takes a little longer for one reason or another.
And, it can also depend on what's going on in your life. So let's say you go through this, like a month later, you're feeling great. You're like, oh, like I recovered so well. And then, I don't know, I'm just gonna be real with like all the parents on here, right? And then your teenager goes and does something ridiculous. And you like are really having a hard time with it, but you only have so much control over the situation. All of a sudden you're now dealing with mental stress. And it is a different kind of injury than the physical one that you just had, but you have to acknowledge, you're like, oh, okay, that just started to fill my bucket. Let me go back to being careful with my diet so that I can mentally handle the stuff my teenager's doing. And it's just a piece of it. So when we can start to think of all these different things as like not detrimental, like they're not going to kill you, but you're like, oh, it's a piece of my load. Let me alleviate other pieces of my load to handle this piece, even though they can show up in different areas. And then it's just kind of understanding that we have this physical, mental, chemical tripod that we're managing.
Right. And regarding even the bucket, when you had talked about the Epsom salt, I would think that if somebody had surgery, obviously they're not going to do the full immersion, but get a bucket from the garden, fill it up with warm water, add the Epsom salts and put your feet in it. It's amazing, the absorption. And our body needs that magnesium to help us with that relaxation, as well as help other vitamins and minerals like vitamin D and all kinds of other things. Our body needs that in order for us to be able to basically process through all the rest of the things, whether we are eating the food and getting the nourishment that way, or even supplementation. So yes,